For a while now, I have asked myself whether wider tires actually make a noticeable impact on the consumption of a vehicle. And for a while now, I haven't been able to test it. But now I have the perfect test subject. Right here, we have our 2013 Skoda Roomster. It has a 1.2 liter TDI 3-cylinder that puts out about 75 horsepower. And we want to put some sport tires on it. So I thought, let's do a 20 to 30 minute drive on the old tires, the original tires, and record our consumption throughout, and then put on sport tires and record the consumption again and see whether it actually makes an impact on the actual consumption itself. We're not going to be doing the fully fueling up the car and refueling it again afterwards. And we're not going to go down to the milliliter of fuel exactly, because I want to do a real life test whether you actually notice it inside the car. So we're going to be taking the exact values from the dashboard and recording those. And it's going to be interesting to see whether it actually makes a difference or whether you can't really notice and it's very minuscule differences in fuel. So, without further ado, let's do our first lap with the original tires, and then we'll go from there. Let's go. Cool. We are now in the car. We have our starting line right here and our starting point where we're going to start from both times. Our camera recording here to record the driving stuff. If we need to cut anything in between or talk about anything specific, we're gonna do it with the phone here. But as we can see here, we have our consumption. We also have our 2 spots during the drive where we're gonna record the current consumption there, so we can have some checkpoints in between. And for now, we're gonna hit reset, so this is 0, and then immediately we're gonna drive off. And we're gonna do as much consumption as possible, or as little consumption as possible. We're gonna do economic driving, so rolling into a town. We're not gonna do a lot of braking. We're gonna go nice and slow. We're gonna keep it at about 80 to 90 km/h for most of the drive. And we're just gonna nice and steadily. Also, the car here has a gauge that tells you which gear you should be in once you get high enough in the RPM, and I'm also gonna follow that as closely as I can so we can keep it nice and steady for the 2 different tries, so that they're nice and the same as much as we can be. So I'm already breaking my first law of just letting it roll into town, because cars, or modern cars, have this feature that if you actually, like you can see now, when you get off the throttle, it actually doesn't inject any more fuel into the combustion chamber. So it actually doesn't use any fuel. If you leave it running in neutral, it will roll further because it doesn't have the drag of the engine on it. But it will, as we can see now, have a little bit of consumption with it. So we're gonna use the rolling as much as possible, and yeah, we're gonna keep the consumption to a minimum that way. So yeah, that's it. have just arrived at our first checkpoint, and right now we are at an average consumption of 3.9 liters per 100 kilometers, and that's our range. We've been driving for 12 kilometers, and at a speed of roughly 48 kilometers an hour in average. And we have been driving for 15 minutes. So 15 minutes, 12 kilometers, and 3.9 liters per 100 kilometers at checkpoint 1. We are now at our second checkpoint, and we went up from 3.9 to 4.0. We have been driving now for 23 minutes now, and we have an average speed of 41 kilometers since the second part was more city driving, so I'd expect the consumption to go up a bit, and we've only driven 3 kilometers since our last checkpoint. So that is the stats right now. Let's go to the next checkpoint. We're back from our first drive with the efficiency tires, if you want to call it that, and nothing that I haven't expected. Outside of town driving obviously was better for our consumption than in city driving. There's also quite a lot of cars around on the road, and I couldn't go into full grandpa mode driving just because I didn't want to inconvenience them too much. We have a consumption of 4.1 liters per 100 kilometers. It was at the first checkpoint down to 3.9 or 3.8 at times even. And that is a very good consumption even for this car. So I'm happy with that part. But then we got into the city and it went up to 4.2 liters per 100 kilometers at our second checkpoint. And then the last little bit, which was a tiny bit of city driving, and the rest back home to here, got us back down from 4.3 to 4.1. Which I'm happy with. I'm okay with. 4.1 liters per 100 kilometers is a pretty good consumption even for newer cars. So what are you gonna do? And now we are gonna take these crappy, ugly, stupid looking tires off and put our bigger, nicer, better looking sport tires on. And we're gonna see how that's gonna change our consumption. So let's go to the tire changing spot. Here we are, back with the sport tires. We managed to get them on pretty quick. And I made sure that the tire pressures are all the same, or what they're supposed to be, just like I made sure on the other ones. And we're going to do the same lap that we did before in these tires, and then we're going to talk about the differences. So, let's go. We are back with the sport tires now. As you can see, back at our starting line. Where's our sport tires? And we are right now gonna go and reset our average consumption. Boom. Actually, we're gonna reset everything. Oh, everything is reset. Cool. And now we are gonna set off. And let's go. Camera up here is also recording. And let's see if there's gonna be a difference. Alright, we are at the first checkpoint of the big tire or sport wheel drive, and we can clearly tell that this is already using way more fuel than the other drive, since we are at 4.2 instead of 3.9 or 3.8, whichever one it was. And yeah, 14 minutes, average speed of 52, which I think is about the same, and 12 kilometers driven like the other one. So yeah, we can already start to make conclusions about our outcome of this. But let's do the rest of the drive, see when it whether we're still going to come back to our same conclusion. So let's see. We have just gotten to the second checkpoint of the drive with the big wheels, and we are at an average speed of 45, which is higher than our other one. An average consumption of 4.3, which is actually the same as the other test, or as with the small wheels. And but it's actually very surprising that we have caught up to the other wheels. And 15 kilometers like the other thing. And like I said, 45, which is a bit quicker. That might be why, because the car rolls into... Oh, one just went down to 44. The car rolls into the towns a whole lot better, but I think needs more gas to actually keep on speed at the higher speeds. So that might be it. Since we're now not doing as much high speeds, it could be that it's about the same as the other wheels. So let's get to the final destination and see. All right, we are back from our second drive. This one was a bit different from our first one, considering that we are about 1 hour, 2 hours later than the first drive. So there was a lot less cars, and we can see that in our average speed that it was higher. And very surprising results, actually. The first third of our, to the first checkpoint, we actually used a lot more fuel than from the other wheels. We were up quite a bit. Then the second checkpoint, we actually matched with our other checkpoint, with the first one. And then on the third checkpoint, or the finish line, we actually used a bit more. We are now up to 4.3 liters per 100 kilometers, which is 0.1 only higher than our first one, which is surprising results, because I thought after the first checkpoint we would get way higher for everything, since we were in at 4.3 instead of 3.9, which is surprising. And then for the other ones, we basically matched, if not improved on the thing. So city driving on the sport tires are actually better than the normal tires, which is a surprising result, but could make sense, since these are roll better and have more, or just roll better into towns. I hope you guys liked watching. This was fun to record. Told me a lot about the car and the tire, and it was very surprising. I will see you in the next video. See you then.